We have several problems in the United States when it comes to water issues. We have flooding problems in the river valleys like the Mississippi and Ohio. We overuse the water in the aquifers, such as the Ogallala Aquifer, in the Great Plains, causing the water table to continue to drop, and we have water shortage issues in the American Southwest and California. In this video we will learn that how can we solve several of these problems, while increasing our agricultural yield and reducing our oil dependency. Here are the problems dealing with water issues in the United States. 1. There are many areas of the country that are prone to flooding when there is large amounts of rain. These include the Mississippi and Ohio valleys in the Midwest and the Great Plains, as well as other river valleys. 2. Our Great Plains, which is considered the breadbasket of the United States, relies heavily on underground aquifers, most noticeably the Ogallala Aquifer, for its water needs for irrigation purposes. Because so much water is used, the water tables on these underground aquifers has been dropping. If something is not done soon, the Great Plains may get to the point where they don't have enough water for their needs. 3. We have growing populations in the Intermountain West, particularly in the southwestern United States, on arid desert land, including New Mexico, Arizona, and some parts of Southern California. This presents a problem because the more the population grows, the higher their water needs are. Their water needs are higher than the amount that is immediately available nearby. 4. There are large amounts of land in the Intermountain West that sits vacant, not being used for anything productive, because it is either semi-arid or arid, and doesn't get much rain. This is land that, if it had more water, could be irrigated and be useful for agricultural purposes, producing food products for our growing needs, and producing biodiesel and ethanol use in motor vehicles and reducing our oil dependency on other nations. 5. California presents a problem unto itself. It has a high population with large water needs, and its Central Valley, which produces a large amount of vegetables, relies heavily on irrigation for its water needs. Solutions. Here are the solutions to the problems that I just presented. 1. We need to create a water rerouting network from the Midwestern river valleys, and other locations prone to flooding. This would be in the form of canals or underground pipelines. These networks would quickly pull excess water away from these areas at times of flooding during heavy rains, etc., and by doing so would help to protect those river towns and farmland in those river valleys from flooding. This would greatly reduce the amount of damage and devastation that would result from flooding since it would be eliminated. It would also reduce the amount of crop losses that happen from flooding, helping to increase our agricultural yield and reducing the amount of money our government spends paying farmers for losses and people for loss and destruction of their property by flooding. Besides this, drainage would be improved, and marshlands created, in our farmland, to allow excess water to drain off of crops during heavy rains, and run into these marshlands. This would improve agricultural yield on each individual farm field by reducing crop destruction during heavy rainfalls, while at the same time improve the environment by creating habitats for birds and animals. 2. This water rerouting network would take excess water from areas farther east, through the canals and underground pipelines previously discussed, and move it over to the Great Plains, to be used for agricultural consumption. By doing this, the Great Plains can rely less heavily on water from the aquifers, and more heavily on water brought in from elsewhere, for their irrigation needs. By doing this, we can allow those aquifers, such as the Ogallala Aquifer, to replenish itself, so that its level rises over time to its maximum. 3. Some of the water in that water rerouting network can go past the Great Plains to the Intermountain West region, to be used out there. Of course, some of the water will go to such areas as Albuquerque and Phoenix to be used for the water needs of people living out there, but much of it would be used for agricultural purposes. If you drive out west on, say I-10 or I-40, you'll notice that there are large amounts of land that is relatively flat in between different mountain ranges. In my opinion, this is land that is just yearning to be harnessed for something useful, such as growing crops, except there isn't enough water to irrigate this land. If we brought in excess water from the east, we could utilize it for irrigation purposes in the Intermountain West, and greatly increase our agricultural yield. 4. On the coast of California can be built several desalination plants that allow places such as the San Francisco Bay Area and Southern California to have their water needs met entirely from the ocean. This would eliminate their need for water from the Sierra Nevada mountains and the Colorado River, and allow that water to be used more in other areas of the Intermountain West for more agricultural irrigation, thus allowing more farmland development and even more agricultural yield. In fact, these desalination plants can have their excess cleaned up water moved through canals and pipelines farther east to be connected to the water rerouting network. That way, the Intermountain West and the Great Plains could have their water sources come from either the east or the west.